Thank you very much all for coming and listening to me today, your host, Peter Haddock. And also, I'll be joined live by Mark Lawton. And Mark Lawton from Skanska is also the chairman of the Plant and Earthworks community. And not only that, Mark has been on a journey with continuous automated plant group. And got a lot of information that Mark is going to talk about today. And also, what's going to happen, folks, is I managed to talk to leading plant hirer Chris Matthew from Flannery Plant Hire, who's actually going to give us a different perspective on what Mark's talking about as a tier 1 contractor. So really today we're going to do 3 parts. First of all, we're going to introduce the CAP automated plant group and the CAP community statements and what they actually mean to the industry. Then we're going to talk about the hurdles that the industry faces and how we're going to overcome them and how we have been overcoming some of them. And then finally, we're going to go to the fun bit at the end, which is the future gazing, folks, because I'm really excited about what's going to be happening in the future, because for me, I'm already seeing some of that, and you will see some of that I saw early on this week. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mark. And Mark, I really want to start by explaining what on earth is CAP and what are the commitment statements and where they come from.
Hello, Peter. So the CAP commitment came about through the need for UK PLC to investigate current technology and future possibilities, and the ways to overcome the hurdles to an autonomous future. So Highways England brought I3P, TRL, Costain together to do the research and produce the 2035 CAP roadmap. However, the 2035 roadmap is an extensive document, may not be read by the masses. So we needed to get some simple, short commitment statements for all. And connecting automated planting, us as technology experts, we know that, but not everyone knows that. So my connections within the 3D machine control community and wider, we cast a net over the industry experts to ensure we got the Plant and Earthworks community was represented in this roadmap. We, the CAP community, then wrote 25 statements that contain around 20 words each that are simple and clear statements. So let me just give an example of those clients. So we'll give you a link to this later on to the documentation. Clients, all I3P clients will reference where appropriate the I3P CAP statements in their business process and procurement to accelerate and transform the adoption of connected and automated plant. This means simply that the client can make this happen and they want it to happen. Connectivities, and I'm going to shorten this slightly. All I3P sites will investigate the possibilities for early installation of permanent communications for connectivity of 4G, 5G. So this ensures that the CAP plant will connect to the cloud and back. And you've got to understand that connectivity is what drives everything. Design. All I3P clients must deliver design for machines in a digital format that allows automated design for drawing to a machine, so sending the data straight to the machine. In the same way as a CNC machine or a 3D printer can make a model and produce an item, the same needs to happen for Earthworks design.
Now, Mark, I think you're right there, and I think there's always been a bit of a disconnect that I've seen for many years between the earthworks sector and the construction sector. And what I think we're aiming to do with statements and what we're aiming to do today is say, folks, that time has got to come to an end. And I think that's why it's apt that I've got Chris Matthew talking to us today virtually, because he couldn't make it, about what his thoughts are as a delivery partner to major projects. So let's hear from Chris at Flannery Plant Hire, and me, of course. Chris, great to have you on.
Hi, Peter.
So, Chris, we're talking about the CAP community commitment statements, and I know it's something you as Flannery have been involved in, and actually, you know, those statements, as Mark has explained before we actually bring you in, have really strengthened the industry already, but they're going beyond. So really, what I wanted to know is, what does the statements mean to your business and what I would call UK Earthworks PLC, and get your point on that.
I think the CAP group has been very, very instrumental in collating a lot of fragmented ideas. None of the ideas in isolation are revolutionary, so to speak, but to actually pull into a single document work streams that we're going to go and focus on as a community to actually advance this CAP properly. The theory of connected and autonomous plant, it's not new, is it? But if we can actually pull together the right skill set, work in a single direction, we've got far greater chance of achieving something in the near future.
I think one of the things that has done and said to us is actually, it's aligning the sector, isn't it? For many years, I've talked about how there is a big gap between the earthworks providers like yourself and the rest of the construction industry. So we're talking about the contractors and designers that are designing these whole plans for things. So tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are on that area.
I think you've kind of summarised it quite well, Peter. You know, we've got a lot of challenges within our own sector with regards to the machine ownership and life cycle of machinery in the first instance. I work for an organisation that prides itself on running quite a new fleet, which brings with it its own challenges. But if you're a contractor or a designer, it's very much dependent upon what you designed in the first place. Did you incorporate BIM in your design, and how have you translated that through to the machine choice that you're going to make on site? And equally, the contractors themselves, you know, they might be challenged, their KPIs might be wholly different and not geared towards utilising connected plant as a tool to get the best out of the machinery, let alone the design.
And I think that's really important, Chris. But what we need to kind of understand is you've actually already been implementing some of the original CAP statements, haven't you? And that innovation is really important because that's taken you on a journey of innovation to reality and what's therefore in the pipeline. So what have you actually done so far? And you know, there's some big projects, isn't there, out there that you've been doing things on?
Absolutely. I'm going to pick on a word that you said there. So journey. Me personally, I've been part of this process for what feels like years and years, perhaps not as long as some, but we've come from a stage now where we had a single asset, an item of plant, and maybe you'd have many items of plant working in isolation in the field. The technology has improved significantly over the course of even my relatively short career, to the point where we now talk about connected plant. So all of those machines now talk to one another, or rather they talk to the cloud and then they talk to one another. So we can begin to get a bit of a picture in terms of how the machines are going to work. The next stage is how we use that data proactively in collaboration with the designers and the BIM model. So go back to my journey. We've done this to a certain extent, going way back to the Norwich NMDR project, which is a project over in the east of England, where we began to look at data and try to be a little bit more proactive. Now we're talking very, very high level data. The reality is that was quite basic. We were just looking at machine idle time and engine time. Taking it a stage further, you begin to look at other jobs like the A14, M6, M4, where we proactively managed some of that information in collaboration with the design. Now that's driven double-digit benefits with regards to machine utilization. It's driven down idle time. And those are just the basics. You fast forward to today, Peter, a job you're interested in in East Leeds Orbital Route. You look at how we're now tracing movements. So we can now in real time see where the trucks are, whether they're fully loaded, are they going at the correct speed, are they stopping at any point, are there any bottlenecks? We can work out the cost per ton, we can work out exactly how much material has been moved, where we've moved it to, so that we can factor that back into the design. So that it helps the engineers have a pretty accurate idea in terms of, well, we know exactly how much we wanted to move, we know how much we've moved today, so we're going to know exactly how much we've moved in 3 months' time. So we can phase our machines, we can make sure we've got the right size of machine, and we can up or downscale the rate of hire fit for purpose. Factor forward a little bit of preemptive thinking, we can even start talking about the weather. You know, so we can see 5 days in advance with some accuracy that we're going to have some heavy rain. So we begin to dial back the machines that we've got on site. That might be off hire, it might be suspensions. But again, it's just being proactive. It's helping the customer understand that they're getting the best value for money in the machine hire.
I think that's really important, Chris, and thanks very much for that initial insight. Well, folks, back to me, and I think the most important thing about that is the word journey. We've got this journey. Some of us have been on it, some of us are coming new to it, but actually that journey of bringing everything together is really the most crucial thing of where the CAP statements are going to help us from end to end. But Mark, you know more about that end-to-end process and how fragmented that's been. So tell me about the new journey that we're going into with the help of the CAP statements and the focus.
So the journey, the roadmap is there, but we've got some fundamental, where I alluded to earlier about connectivity and design. So the design is sent out to the machine. It must have a small turnaround time and be suitable for use in any brand of machine without an engineer having to rewrite the design. The plant operators must be able to easily use the model and build the project, as built the project and return the data. So we need to invest in training in plant operators to use this technology. So you export from the design, check it, use the design, as built the works, check the works, and send the house bills back. With connected plant, this should be easier than in the past. And that part on the design that's in the CAP statements will drill down on the designers to do this.
Yeah, I think really important that, Mark, because what I see is actually the journey that we've been on, and a lot of people have been on one of these particular projects I'd like to talk about, including yourself, and that's the A14. We've seen the way in which the industry can collaborate and also the way in which we can start to deliver a connected work site. You know, so one of those projects that really has made a difference, and I think we can learn from, and we have learned from. But tell me about how that project brought this sort of journey into a collaborative journey, as we say.
So we decided early on that we would run with a pinless site and invest in 3D machine control. However, we had to wait for some machines to come to their end of their investment cycle, so an old machine. This meant that pilot machines were fitted with the 3D machine control and the slave machines did the general loading. This led to an opportunity of using the mentoring of a pilot driver, so one of the 3DMC could swap to a slave driver, so doing general loading, and importing those skills. Those skills came from Western College and other training areas like Walters, Flannery, and the skill sets they built. Then we used the simulators to help the newcomers dip their toe into the new technology of 3D machine control and the linkage into connected and automated plant. We also used augmented reality to brief some drivers to help explain the models within the machines. And once they got their hands on this technology, they were empowered to deliver it, and they just wanted to get on and do that. So this is where the CAP statements came in to be valuable again, that all the designers shall work with their design and construction teams to agree formats of data transfer for automated direct feed of the design to the machines and other automated plant.
Now, Mark, I think, you know, that's all well and good in my mind, but we all know that there are plenty of hurdles out there for bringing this all together. That was a really well done integrated project by all people that are involved in it. But I wanted to ask the question to Chris about those hurdles, because obviously in a utopia it will all be absolutely perfect, wouldn't it? But we're on a journey here. So I'm going to hear a bit more now from Chris, which is talking about those hurdles that they've had to overcome.
It's new and challenging. We come up against some blockers every now and again. In terms of the data, you've probably heard this several times, Peter, the machines themselves generate a wealth of information. The challenge is collating all of that into a usable format in as regular occurrence through the working day as possible. Big data is our challenge. We need to be able to pull the same data feeds from all the machines as often as possible. And I guess some of the OEMs are working with us and some of the OEMs are playing a little bit of catch up. We need to find a way where we can keep everyone on the level playing field, so we've got the same sort of data standard and offer the customer.
Yeah, and I think, that's not just data that you receive the next day or half an hour later, is it? You're talking about real-time data and how that can feed back into a process where you can therefore work better with a contractor. And I guess you need to also have the contractors that understand how that works as well, because instead of sort of the old traditional beating you with a stick because you've given us all this data about how things have worked and haven't worked, it's got to be more constructive, hasn't it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's one of the key parameters of the CAP group. I think on the one side, we've got the technology, which is great. We're developing that all the time, and the OEMs are coming to the table with new, innovative ways of working. We can't leave behind the human side, whether it be the operator, the plant manager, the construction manager, or the purchasing manager. We need to help them understand how they can make best use of that information. So one of the key hurdles is, as you rightly mentioned, how regular we're getting that information. How can we feed it into their daily routines so that it's not suddenly this ocean of information that don't have the time or the information to do with. Otherwise, we're all just wasting our time. So I really do think it's important that the CAP group has brought the people and the society elements together, and so that we're addressing those aspects at the same time.
Yeah, and I think, there's investment there in the time that's taken to do and the knowledge, but also, Chris, there's investment that you've got to make, haven't you? And I think part of the CAP group statements and what you were saying to me earlier before we recorded this is actually how we say, look, everyone, to get here, we have to invest in new equipment and we have to invest in skills and development of our operator community as well, and bringing people in. What are your thoughts on how the CAP statements can overcome those sort of hurdles and the whys and wherefores of why you've got to charge that amount of money for something, for example?
Yeah, I think our industry is quite traditional, isn't it? When you talk about investment, whether it be a bridge or whether it be a machine, you've got a tangible asset in terms of what you're buying. Data is something a little bit new, and it's a little bit intimidating because it's intangible. It's a thing. It's out there. Typically now, when we're purchasing machines, we've got two very big costs that we look at. We've got the capital purchase of the asset, and then we've got any licensing or software that goes with it. And that's where the data sits. The third big element is the training. We're very good at training operators. We've been doing it for years and years, but have we got the provision in place to train those plant managers, those purchasing managers, and indeed the operators to a certain extent? Because it's a whole other cost base that we need to get our heads around. If we fail to do that as a community, then we're going to have these fantastically expensive machines that aren't being utilized properly, in which case we've not really moved the bar any further forward, have we? So in terms of hurdles, we need to take the group as a collective to the point where we can actually use these machines and make that adequate investment.
And I think, that adequate investment is not just in that space as well, Chris, it's also in the environment, isn't it? And making sure that we understand how the things that we work together as a CAP group can actually benefit ourselves, yes, financially by reducing things like fuel burn, but by doing that, it's the environment that benefits as well. And I know you've got a big phrase saying that you like to talk about when it comes to fuel, but I won't say that myself. I'll let you talk about that, Chris, please.
I think that's a very fair point, Peter. I think when we look at fuel, we often forget the well to wheel. There's my phrase.
That's good. Yeah.
So I think we need to understand as a community what our objectives are, and I think looking at connected and autonomous plant, the drivers for that are to reduce our fuel consumption, reduce the total amount of plant on site where possible, and the reason for that is to reduce the people-plant interface incursions. Now, there's lots of environmental benefits that we mustn't lose sight of. If we're burning less fuel physically, we're transporting less of it in the first place, and hopefully the emissions into the atmosphere reduce. I think all of us are members of not only the CAP group, but also the Supply Chain Sustainability School, where some of us have signed up to the Plant Charter. It's an integral part of that we're sharing that information and those learnings to reduce the total amount of plant on site. If we can get together on that, then it's far better than just a Flannery or another plant hire company or a client doing it in isolation. You get to do it as a community.
And thanks very much for that, Chris. And that, folks, is really the important bit, because, I've been in this industry for a long time now, and there's been some very large sticks that people have been beating, Mark, over the period of time. And when you are giving people this information and data, if you haven't got the right standards, if people can't use it, if they can't access it, if it's not real time, you can't manage a site by saying, oh, yesterday we had a huge trail of ADTs doing nothing. So our commitment to you was not met. Or, hey, what about stopping on site even? That's incredibly crazy because we've had some really bad weather conditions and bringing it all in. So these are the things, the hurdles that we've got to come over. And, they're not just hurdles for the people like yourself and Chris. We do need to say to the OEMs that are producing these equipments and to the system players that are collecting that data, this is how we want that data to be used. And again, I think the big important thing that we've recognized through what Chris is saying as well is training the people on how to use that data. So the human side of all this. Data's great, but if you can't do something because you're given information from data, what's the point in having the data in the first place? So a lot of different elements there, Mark. Please just pick out the different elements to you from your context and how that works from a sort of main contractor perspective.
So Chris talked about the costing and procurement. So that links perfectly into the procurement cap statement. It's perfect. All procurement should encourage the adoption of cap technology where there is a clear all life cycle outturn cost. So this was an issue where people only look at machines again. However, in the past we would have had setting out, engineers, assistants, banksmen, checkers, plus the back rails, profiles and pins. Well, that's all gone. So these 5 items of cost are now generally 4 of those have been removed. So the whole life cycle cost of an operation is reduced. That means we have less people plant interface, making it a safer site. So people are starting to see through procurement rather than it being a cycle cost of an operation and just looking at the machine. They're looking at the full cycle cost and saying this is what we need to do. So the cap statements will provide procurement teams, project managers, designers with the correct wording to place in their project documentation and start the right conversations and push the agenda of connecting an automated plant. So these short, sweet, 20-word-ish paragraphs are gold dust for those that don't have the technical knowledge but want to start that journey onto cap.
Mark, that's fantastic, but we're talking about plant, and there, my friend on the screen, is a digger. It's an excavator, and one of these excavators I saw working this week on a site with Plant Force, and it's got something special on it, this, Mark, and I'm going to play this video and explain what that something special is, because after all, if we haven't got any diggers, we can forget about how we're going to deliver these projects. So let's go for it. So this, folks, is actually the wonderful Cabelco unit, which has a slight digging advantage than anything else because it's got the brand new, this is the first in the world, automatic system on from Leica Geosystems. You can see the Leica Geosystems tablet there. The operator is actually using this system to assist them in how they can actually dig to the grade and to the model. And this doesn't allow him to dig below that model. So it's a really specific system, first in the UK, that allows us to do that. And it's really, really quite exciting. And also, folks, I've got another video that I'd like to share with you as well, that actually brings in some of the really exciting other elements to the industry, because not only have we got this in an automatics context, we've also got something which I know, Mark, you are very excited to talk about, and that in itself is something called taking people out of the job site and into their PlayStation room or their office or my office, in fact. And this, again, with Kobelco, is a remote control. So you can imagine the Leica Geosystem system, automatics combined with remote control, where basically we can operate these machines completely safely on the job site. And what that means, people that literally don't have to travel to the site. And when Chris was talking earlier about his well to track, basically that means that we're reducing the carbon impact of somebody actually going to site. And I know, Mark, you've been involved in this quite severely, so really there's a lot more to this as well that you want to talk about and share, and that vision. So Mark, it's back to you to talk about that, please.
So again, the connectivity from the CAP statements that all I3P sites will investigate the possibilities of early installation of permanent communications. This is essential. We've got to not beat ourselves up too much about this. Remember that the internet has now come. It wasn't there in the past, so connectivity is getting more and more. So we're on that wave and we must now ride it. The ability and expectations of the machines, we must make this happen. The people that will remotely pilot the future CAP machines come from an Xbox culture, and we have to do well by these people. Our children that are used to the internet through their Xbox machines will want to actually sit in a local office and drive these machines remotely. So the future is here for this, and we can do this with the machines that you've just shown, Peter. And that is deeply embedded inside the CAP statements.
Yeah, and I think, that's really exciting. But again, Mark, what we hear is pushbacks and hurdles. But people are saying, well, it'll take the operator skills away. Well, actually, no, it won't. We're seeing on that machine that I showed you at Plant Force, they put their best operator, 18 years experience, onto that machine with the automatic system from Leica Geosystems. Why? Because you've got to know the fundamentals of moving Earth in order to actually operate a machine. You're using this technology to make sure that it actually helps you to achieve your grades first time. You're not going back. You're not refilling, in fact, if you overdig. And we all know from a safety perspective as well, Mark, you're not going to utility strike if you've gone over with the underground radar, again, systems and solutions that Leica Geosystems have got to actually map a site before you go onto it. So a lot of these things are important. And there's one other thing I want to talk to you about, Mark, is people say, and particularly older operators, oh, it's not for me. I don't like it. It's not for me. I met somebody called Murray Stokes. Murray is literally due for retirement, but they won't let him retire, Mark, because for Knight's Construction, he's their best operator. And he has a D7E that he goes and takes into farmers' fields because they're specialists in farm sheds and structures like that. He didn't want to use the technology, Mark, but they put the technology on. They said, hey, give it a go. If you don't like it, don't worry about it. And what happened, Mark, is Murray got taken through that. And this is the education piece, Mark, we're talking about. This is the big journey piece now. They were taken through it by Steve Claybrook, who took it patiently through that information, how to use it all. And then literally 4 to 5 days later, he became not an operator, he became an operator and a surveyor on site because he was actually able to use that system, his skills in how to drive that, and that D7E is an electric drive powerful machine, and he was able to mark out the spots where the other excavators had to put some of the utilities in. And all of a sudden, Murray, a very experienced operator who hated the thought of technology, kept him awake at night, has now become the ultimate operator and surveyor. And we can see the technology with new machines and with camera systems that they're going to be surveying sites themselves. Now, Murray also has a big benefit to most other people because operators get up earlier onto site before anybody else. So instead of waiting there, supping coffee, waiting for the other guys to turn up, Murray starts the machine. He's got the model. It's the latest revision is sent over the cloud using a Connex system from Leica, and he starts work. And then when the other people decide to turn up with a sandwich and the bacon roll, he's done half the plot, So it's about those sort of elements as well. And this is the future. So, Mark, I'm going to sort of close this off by saying 2021. Tell me about it.
So 2021 and the future you need to talk about there as well. You forgot about mental health. Well, you didn't forget about mental health. I've spoke to drivers that were coming for retirement, and because the machine is doing the hard work now, the accuracy work, it's pushed them deeper into retirement. So they want this technology. I will talk about piloting and getting into a machine remotely. So actually, what I see the future in reality is we need to think about the remote piloting heavily. Currently, we're using remote piloting for doing destruction in war zones by the RAF, and we can use remote piloting for construction in his own sites. I believe in the future, what is going to happen is that you will go to an hub centre because you still like going to work. You'll probably jump into a machine remotely for call it a tour of duty. You might do 3 weeks at home. At your hub centre, having the crack with your friends, and then maybe 1 week you'll do on an actual site to get your site experience. And if you think of the way that the machines work and as a social aspect is that you'll connect to the machine. If you need to go to the toilet or take a comfort break, is that the entire work process doesn't close down. You'll lean over and say, Peter, can you drive this machine for me 5 minutes? Or if you need to go to the doctor, can you drive this machine? And I think what will happen when we come to this connected area of remote piloting, a lot of the seats will look the same. So you have a generic seat and it'll be the same in an excavator and dozer, but the buttons will be blanked out for that operation. So I see that that's where the future is going to change. But in the short term, the Cabelco type machines, where we're going to bring short-term distance remote piloting. I think that's what's going to be really next, and it's on the horizon for 2021.
Well, Mark, you shared a little secret with me that it certainly is on that horizon. So I'm going to be there, and the first one you have promised that I can go and see it first. But we're not far off with this. And what has been really exciting is what we're doing today, sharing this information with everybody. We're also able to speed up that. People are a lot more comfortable with talking online like we are doing today. They're a lot more comfortable with learning and pushing hard because our industry is actually in an infrastructure context, is in a boom phase, Mark. You know, we've got to do this. We've got to do this for our future. But we've also got to do this to attract the talent in and also to reduce our impact on the environment. You know, Indeed. It's all win-win-wins here. But like we said on that journey is now coming together. These CAP statements, these mission statements, are actually going to be in procurement leaders' hands. So they're going to be in the tender document. So people need to really ramp up their knowledge, Mark. And that's why we've been here today, ramping up the knowledge with you, making sure the future is looking bright. And it's not orange. It looks like it's the Cabelco colour at the moment from that context. But thanks very much. One, for joining me in this conversation. Two, for everybody else joining me and smiling along as we go through the different phases. It's really important. There's a lot of things we need to do. I'm here as a journalist influencer and also as a member of the CAP group to help support everybody, to project that out as to what they're doing on sites. And I hope to do more and more of that with you, Mark, and with the wider CAP community, bringing in people like Chris, like we've done. So it's enough from me. Thanks very much, folks. And it's over. Back to Mark.
Well, let's just go on there. If you want to find the CAP statements, hopefully there's a slide popping up now. If you go into, you can either email me or get us through Twitter, LinkedIn, and we'll pass it on there. But if you search through Highways England, Innovation Hub, CAP, you'll find the statements there in the roadmap, and that's where the latest statements are, and you will see all the protagonists there as well. But the community is here. If you need our help, and we need your help, please come together because we want to make it safer, efficient, and greener. And there's only us guys that can do that, and girls, sorry.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks everybody for listening.